everyone. My name is Kayla Cox, and hopefully you can hear me. Hopefully we're live now. I am the owner of this channel, 6 Miles to Supper. A little bit about me, in case you've only seen like maybe one of my videos. I lost 80 pounds with intermittent fasting. I went from 222 down to 142. I maintain nowadays in the 140s. That's my goal. And generally speaking, the way I lost weight was the bulk of it was through OMAD, which is 1 meal a day. But generally speaking, over that process, it was intermittent fasting. So maybe starting out with like a 16/8 was when I really started having more of a consistent result. And I've kind of done it in spurts. So in 2015, I lost about 15 or about 20 pounds, and I gained like 5 back, and I was just kind of trending upwards, and I wasn't really being consistent with anything. 2016, that's when I got really consistent. I lost the bulk of my weight, about 50 more pounds. And then after I started this channel, I decided, I wanted to lose a little bit more weight, wanted to get down into the 140s, and so that's what I did. And my preferred way to eat when I'm trying to lose weight is with OMAD. Just eat 1 meal a day. I don't count calories. I don't limit carbs. If anything, I probably eat, if you had to classify, like how do I eat, I would say it's higher carb than, just because carbs are cheap. we're a family of 5 on a budget, so I don't do carnivore, things like that. I don't do keto. It's just regular food that I eat. And so I have a podcast also that I do in addition to all the videos I've done on YouTube. I've got, I don't know, like 170 something, I think, at this point. So a lot of the topics have been covered, but I know that people have questions. So if you have questions, you can just pop them in the chat, and be happy to answer them. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm just somebody who's been there, done that, and I can share my experience, and hopefully that can help you. And I also walk 6 miles a day. That's another thing I do, and I take a cheat day on Sunday. That has changed slightly a little bit because it used to, first of all, I'm in maintenance now. So when I was just doing my plan to lose weight, it was 6 days a week on OMAD, and then cheat day on Sunday, which when I say cheat day, I just mean a day off from fasting. Like I would just eat breakfast, and I would eat lunch, and I would eat snacks if I wanted, and supper and more snacks afterwards, whatever I wanted. During maintenance, though, I'm a little bit more loosey-goosey. I don't have like I must do OMAD every day or anything like that. I'm just trying to maintain in that range. And we started going to church, which is not something I was doing when I was losing the weight. So on Sundays, it's a little bit different. I end up fasting for that morning, and then the rest of my day is kind of off. But that also meant pancake breakfast day is different because we fast in the morning, so that comes on Saturday. So it's kind of like, at this point, the weekends are not so fasting oriented, I would say. And then through the week, I'm generally doing some form of intermittent fasting. Generally speaking, OMAD still, but some days I have lunch especially with my kids. Sometimes they're like, hey, will you eat lunch? It's like, yeah, sure. And so that's how it goes. So all that being said, let's get into some questions. So the first one is, hi, Kayla. I remember that you have said that when you first got your Fitbit, you found that you were only naturally taking a couple thousand steps a day, and then it was a big eye-opener for you. I'm wondering if you can explain more about how you got from there to a consistent 14,000 steps a day. Did you have smaller goals along the way? I am doing like you are and counting every step, pacing around my house, but even so, it's still a challenge to get more than 6,000 a day. Even on days when I go for a dedicated walk, I rarely get more than 10,000. How did you manage to do 14,000 every single day when starting from a place of being relatively sedentary? Do you walk faster than you did in the beginning? I am 245 pounds, and I'm wondering if maybe there's a threshold of weight loss I need to reach before I will be able to increase my steps. So that's a really good question, and thank you for asking it. So in the beginning, and like I said, and you're right, it was an eye-opener. It was like, okay, I'm not as active as I thought, so how to get there? So the way it worked for me was like, so that was the end of 2014. I got my Fitbit for Christmas. I bought it for myself for Christmas, and I was like, okay, this is going to be good for me. So so it was about 2 months into having a Fitbit when I joined a gym. So at that point, I was definitely, I mean, when I actually got my Fitbit, I was at least 222 pounds, maybe more than that. I wasn't weighing at that time. And so, so the way it looked for me at first was, you know, I was trying to be more active. I was kind of like, I kept in the beginning thinking, oh, 10,000 steps, like that would be a good goal. And I kept thinking, I'm just going to start naturally hitting it. But I really didn't. And I was so not consistent. In 2015, I mean, I was trying, but I was just not being consistent with stuff. I would just like, kind of like, I wanted to work out really hard. I had it in my mind, like, I have to work out really, really, like I have to lift heavy weights, I have to do CrossFit, and things like that. So I would go to the gym. I started going to the gym. And so before that, it was just like, some days it'd be like 1,000 steps, some days it would be maybe 10,000, because I'd be like, I'm going to get out there and walk. But generally I thought that's not good enough. I need to do more. So I started going to the gym. And so I think, you know, in that year, when I was doing like CrossFit, like I said, I was trying to like work out really hard. I was doing like powerlifting. And so I kind of made a rule for myself. Okay, I'm going to go to the gym every day. But then I would have days where it was like, maybe if I needed to, you know, not lift that day, I would focus on getting my steps in that day. And it was kind of like 10,000 was just kind of this general goal. But what happened is, in the middle of that year, I injured my back doing a deadlift. Like, I was just trying to lift too heavy, and I did it with poor form, and I mean, I was in a lot of pain. So I couldn't do anything except for walk. It was like the only thing that didn't hurt. I could get out there and do some steps. That's when I started to get consistent, because it was like, it was scary. I thought, I can't lose weight unless I'm exercising. Like, I just had it in my brain. I don't think that anymore. I think that I was really relying on exercise, like thinking that was going to be the thing that gets the weight off, but I was just trying to outrun my fork. I just needed to change how much I was eating. That would have solved the problem. But the walking was really important too. So for reasons of sticking with something, I think that was really important, and being able to use that to like clear my mind and to not stress eat and things like that. But so that year, like, so this was 2015, like say July 2015, that was when I hurt my back, I think. And so through that year, like through into the fall, I was really starting to think like, okay, I need to just be consistent with something, like something that I can really like, and I had hurt my back, so I was like really scared of going back and injuring myself again, because I thought, you know, that was dumb, and what might the next one be like. And so so I just thought, I'm going to focus on walking, because walking I can do it at home. I don't have to go to the gym. I'm an introvert, so it just kind of it fit better. And once I was able to just kind of come to the conclusion that I think that this will work as my exercise requirement, I said, okay, well, how much is enough? And I read this article at one point, and it said like, oh, if you just move 3 miles a day, like, you know, do some sort of movement to like move your body 3 miles a day, you'll like lose weight. It was like a celebrity trainer article, those types of things you read. And I thought, well, my metabolism is really slow, so 6 miles a day, that would be good. That would be like a good goal. I would feel like, even though it's not as hard physically, it was a mental challenge too, to do that. And so I chose to say, okay, 14,000 steps. Because I was, at that point, I was like able to get like 12,000 pretty consistently. So, I mean, so that's like over a year's worth of time. And so I said, okay, 14,000, that's it. And I just like, I made up my mind. And I was like, that's what I'm doing. And once I made up my mind, and that was like by January 2016, that's when I really got clear, like, okay, all right, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to do intermittent fasting, and I'm going to do that 6 days a week. I'm going to take a cheat day on Sunday. I'm going to walk 6 miles every single day. And it was like, no excuses, like no excuses. And there were days where I was not good about getting my steps in early in the day. And it was like 11 o'clock. And I'd tell Jay, my husband, who, by the way, is in here in the chat. Yeah, there's his hand. And he's moderating. So thank you, Jay, for doing that. But I would tell him, like, I can't go to bed yet because I've got to get my steps in. And he was always, like, very sweet about that. Like, he never tried to say, oh, you got to go to bed, or, like, oh, you know, like, forget that. Just, you know, come on to bed. He was really supportive. but I would just do it. I mean, so it was like pacing back and forth in my living room at like 11:30 at night, and I'm like just getting those last steps in. And it was just like this thing, like I'm not going to bed until they're done, and I'm not like, and so eventually that helped a lot because I learned how to do something hard every day, like to push myself in a way, because it was a mental challenge. It became less of a physical challenge over time. And it did help to go to your point. You were talking about, like, do you have to kind of like lose more weight to get to that point? I remember in the beginning, like when I was 222, it was physically challenging. I mean, to walk that far. I remember like when I would get 10,000 steps in, I would be like, man, that was that was a lot of steps, and it felt very challenging. And I took breaks. I mean, I needed to take breaks, to sit down. Like I've walked 2,000 steps. Like I need to sit down, and I would just do that. And so. And so I was losing some weight. So like by the time I started to get consistent with it, I would have been hovering around like 205. And so, and then the weight really started to come off consistently. And it does get easier. The more you do it, it gets easier. I would say it was less about the weight lost than it was more about the just getting used to doing the 14,000 steps. So I would say just like if you just work on adding a little bit as you go. You do what you can. Like start where you're at, do what you can, and then add to it until you get to that point where you say, okay, I've done enough for today. 14,000 was the thing I picked. It was very arbitrary. Like it's arbitrary. Whatever you do, you have to figure out, is that going to work for your life? So that was a long-winded answer. Hopefully that helps you. Okay, next question. It's very short when it says, I want your take on OMAD. OMAD is 1 meal a day, as I said. And so I love OMAD. I have found, for me, it is my preferred way to eat most days. I would say, I mean, there are times where it's like, hey, I just want to have lunch today. But generally speaking, I really like OMAD. The reasons I like OMAD is when I sit down to a meal, I like to sit down and eat. Like I like the idea of like really small meals throughout the day. That drives me nuts, and I never feel full. Like after like a small little something, I usually feel hungrier, and so it's like it just almost increases my appetite is what it feels like. So knowing that that's like how it seems like my preferences are, I would rather, have like, if I'm gonna do 2 meals, I'd rather, do that. Like, or if I'm gonna, let's put it this way. I don't believe that it's like harmful or like it's impossible to lose weight, if you have 3 meals a day or 6 small meals a day or whatever the thing is. As long as you're eating the right amount, you can lose weight. I've met plenty of people who have done it in vastly different ways than I've done it. But I just do better when my meals are larger. I feel more satisfied at the end, and I can go longer periods without food. Not everybody's like that. My husband is someone who does not do well with fasting. Like he just like, and my daughter's the same way. She like gets shaky legs. Like if she doesn't eat in the appropriate amount of time, they don't feel like physically they don't feel good. And so, but I'm not like that. I never get the shaky legs. I don't, like, that's just how I'm built. So it depends on how you're built. And like how you want your days to be structured too. I love OMAD because I find that it gives me so much time during the day, like to write or to, read, do all these things. Like eating in other ways like that, it tends to take away from these things that I would rather be doing with my time. So I would rather have my days be structured so that I have like one big meal, and then the rest of my day is just, focused on other things. So, and it seems to me that that's the easiest way for me to eat the appropriate amount of food so that I can maintain in the range I want to maintain it. So, okay, next question. It says from Dion Rod. It says, hello, Kayla. My question is, how long does it take for the body to burn fat while fasting? Next question, if I only eat protein and fat, no carbs, no sugar, am I still in the fasting stage? Okay, so let's see. Everyone's different. if you go and try to find an answer, because I've done this before, like try to find like what is that moment, like when you're fasted, to the best of my ability, the way I understand it is it's really more of a spectrum. So you're more in a fasted state than a not fasted state, like the further along you go from your meal. So like right after you eat, you're not in a fasted state. 12 hours is the thing that I've heard most often, that it seems like around that point, which makes sense because, a lot of times like with, if you're going to get blood work done, it's like fast for 12 hours. And then, then people worry about getting knocked out of the fasted state. So for example, I drink coffee with half and half in it throughout the day, like whenever I want it. It's generally like 1 in the morning, not 1 a.m., but like I have a cup when I wake up in the morning, and then a cup in the late morning. Sometimes it's in the afternoon, and that's generally what I do. But some people would say, oh no, but you've had half and half, and so that knocks you out of the fasted state. I don't really care about being in the fasted state per se. I care about weight loss, or at this point, just maintaining where I'm at. So that was never that important to me, like, am I in the fasted state right now or not? It was just, am I eating in a way that the scale is moving down? And if the scale is moving down, then I'm happy. And but most people though, I would say with intermittent fasting, overall, people tend to find around like a 16-hour fasting window seems to do the best. I think because then your eating window is compressed down to an 8-hour period of time, and there's just less of an opportunity to overeat. Although you certainly can, like, you can be completely perfect and like as far as like sticking to your fasting window and your eating window, but you can be eating too much in your eating window and you will gain weight with intermittent fasting. It is very easy to do. Okay, so the next question was, if I eat only protein and fat, no carbs, are you still in the fasting stage? No. And so here's the thing. Some people will kind of get it in their heads, oh, like basically like you can eat carnivore and just like then it doesn't matter how much you eat. There was I can't remember the guy's channel. You'll have to search for it on YouTube, I guess. But he gained 38 pounds just eating carnivore, and he did it to prove a point. He loves carnivore, by the way, but his point was, this is not about like, oh, you can just eat too many calories and you will like lose weight. That's not the way it works. It's just that people tend to find meat so satisfying that they don't feel hungry anymore, and so they're eating fewer calories without even really realizing it. So hopefully that helps you. Basically, it would be more like if you're eating a certain number of calories, you knock yourself out of the fasted state. Now, I've seen some people say something like 60 calories is a magic number, but again, that's, I'm knocking myself out of the fasted window all the time. Another thing to consider there too is that when you eat like a smaller amount, you're going to be back into the fasted stage a lot quicker because your body will just burn through that energy, and then so it's very difficult. Every body is different, and not a lot of testing is really available where you could even really know this, I think, so at this point in the game. Okay. Bob Hicks says, what should I eat when my fast ends? I eat unhealthy food. Is this wrong? Should I try to eat healthy food only between fasts? Okay, so here's my take on like healthy food versus not healthy food. I don't think of food like that. I think of food as food. That's it. Like I don't say junk food. I don't say anything like that. It's just like, it's food, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for any food that I am given, and so I think it's interesting. Gosh, Mark Hobb, he is a nutrition professor at Fort Hays University in Kansas. And he did what's called the junk food diet. I put that in quotes. And this was years ago. But he wanted to show, or he really just wanted to run an experiment. And so like he had blood work done, and then for several months, he just ate junk food, what we would call junk food, like Twinkies and candy bars and, all these things, stuff that you would find like in a convenience store that is convenience food, what a lot of people would call junk food. He just ate that. I think like the only departure from that was he would at supper time, because he didn't really want to do this in front of his kids, he would eat like a can of green beans, just to kind of like, try to set a good example. And so what happened? Well, he was obese when he started, I think that's right. And he lost, I think that like 36 pounds. All of his blood work improved. So his LDL decreased, the bad cholesterol, that number that you want to be lower, it decreased. His HDL, that the good cholesterol, it increased. I think I can't remember the other measurements, but you can Google it, or maybe Jay can link to the story. But when it's all said and done, his what we would call health markers improved, and he had some interesting thoughts on that, like what does that actually mean? Because some people would be upset that he would even try to look at that, but his thought was, what if we're thinking about this wrong? And if we're thinking about this wrong, that has implications, because of the idea of like, what kind of food do we send? Because quote unquote healthier foods can be a lot more expensive. So if we're just like worried about getting food to like getting calories to malnourished kids in places where they just have a shortage of food, maybe it's not a terrible idea to send what we might call junk food. Like it's an interesting thing, I think, to think about. And I just look at how people have eaten for thousands of years, like bread and just good food, like like butter and oil, and I think humans can survive and thrive on a wide variety of food. My personal take is that it's more important what the amount is. So if you are consistently eating too much food, whatever that means for you, like just like if you're eating too much food for your body, that's generally where we have problems. Like that's when the weight starts to come on, and you can get into that point where you're obese, and then all the health problems that can come with obesity can come on too. But that being said, if you are truly convinced, I think, that certain foods are bad, then you should not be eating them. Like, because you're gonna whatever you believe about something. I mean, you're gonna have stress and stuff if you are thinking, oh, I'm poisoning my body by eating this food that you think is bad for you. Then don't eat that food. So those are my thoughts on that. I just hopefully that was clear. But anyway, okay. Let's see. Seaworth says, hi from Indianapolis. Your thoughts on a 16-36 intermittent regimen. So example, lunch, then dinner, then lunch, then dinner. Okay. So you're, let's see, 16. So you're doing a 16-hour fast and then a 36-hour fast. I'm assuming this, let's see, lunch and dinner. I'm trying to understand.
Maybe they skip a day.
Like I think what you're saying is like, what about having like a 16-hour fast one day, and then the next time though when your fasting starts, you're doing a 36-hour fast, and then so that's what you're doing. I think that's fine. I'm always interested or more focused on what will really fit in your life. So for example, the reason I don't generally do longer than a 24-hour fast is I would miss out on supper with my kids. Like that's really important to me that we have family dinner. So every night, that's what we do. We eat together. We sit down all at the same table, no devices, no screens, no distractions, and we eat and we talk about our day, and it's a really important time. And so doing longer fast would mean that I would be consistently missing those meals. Now, I know that I can sit there and not eat. That's not a problem. I have the skill or willpower, whatever you want to call it at this point. Like, I can sit at a table, and if I'm fasting, I don't care about like eating the food, like generally speaking. But there is something that is very awkward, and I don't like the feeling when you're sitting there fasting and everybody else is eating and they want you to eat, but you're not eating. And I've experienced this a few times because I've done I've done 2 5-day fasts, and so you know, the last one I did was a couple of years ago, I think, and my kids wanted me to sit at the table. Like, they you know, when we're sitting there, even though I wasn't going to be eating, they understood, you know, you're not eating, but they wanted me to sit there, and they didn't like it, and I didn't like it, and there's just some sort of thing that I think is really, really special about sharing a meal with people, and that. And it's the eating part that is it's not so much about the sitting at the same table, and maybe some people are eating, some people are not. It's like sharing the food. There's just an interesting and good thing that happens there. So doing that consistently, I think for me, it just wouldn't work, because it would be like, you know, every other day, right? You would be kind of missing out on that. I think it's hard for me to think about but yeah, you would definitely be having days where you're just not eating anything consistently with a 36-hour fast. I got it in my head there. Like, okay, that's what they're talking about. So if I lived alone, though, like if my life were different, I think it would work. I mean, or I might enjoy that more. To do maybe like I like longer fasts as far as like how do I feel, because occasionally it will happen where like my fast might be longer than 24 hours. But I feel good. It's like, it's a weird thing that can happen where you're like, you go through this period of time where you're like maybe hungry, but then once that passes, then you're not hungry anymore. And it's an interesting kind of feeling to not feel hungry, even though it's been a while since you ate. There's a lot of like clarity and things like that happen. So let's see. While I take a quick little break for some water, I wanted to tell you about DonorSee. So this channel, a portion of the proceeds of this and book sales and everything go to various projects on DonorSee. I'm really intensely interested in trying to make the world a better place. And I think one of the neat ways to do that is to try to help eliminate poverty in the world. And so DonorSee is a great platform to do that on. You can give directly to projects, and you receive video updates on how your money was used. So I think Jay's going to roll a quick little like 30-second video from Prince Inglis. He's a guy who lives in Malawi. Great guy, very sweet. I feel like he's a friend. I've never met him in person, but I've had some discussions with him back and forth, and he's just a great guy. So you can roll that, Jay.
Hello, my name is Prince Inglis, and I am sitting here with this lady who is carrying a 2-day-old baby who lost his mother just this morning. We are at the funeral right now, but Edwin, that's his name, he needs formula milk to sustain him. The parents cannot afford to buy formula for him, and your donation is going to help to save Edwin's life. Thank you very much. Just thinking of reaching out to him in Malawi, Africa. Thank you.
All right, so let's see here. Next questions. Oh, I wanted to talk really briefly about my last blog post. Occasionally I do written blogs. I have several different ways I put out content. One is this channel, the other is the podcast, and the other is the written blog. And so you can check that one out. I really did more of a deep dive on the scale, the daily fluctuations. What does that actually look like and feel like? Because I feel like it's something that is so easy to get tripped up on the weight loss journey, because you can get it in your mind, or at least this is where my mind always was. It was like the scale, whatever the scale said that morning, was either a confirmation of what you did the day before, or like a way to condemn it. So like if the scale goes down, that means I did everything right yesterday, and if the scale goes up, that means I failed, I did something wrong. And it was eye-opening to me when I kind of got away from that way of thinking, and instead of thinking that way, I started to track my weight over time and to like average my weight. So the way I work the tracking side, because the tracking is really important. I mean, intermittent fasting or just eating less food overall is going to be the thing that takes the weight off your body. I think walking or doing some form of exercise is really important, because that usually keeps you in like a happier kind of frame of mind. But the tracking is important too, because you know what your plan, whatever chosen plan you're on, it may not be working, but the only way you're really going to know that is if you're weighing yourself. Like if you're wanting to lose weight, you need to know what you're weighing and how your weight is doing. But the problem is the daily numbers on the scale can kind of be misleading. And what I mean by that is the number goes up and down and up and down and up and down. But at the same time, the trend over time can be moving down. And so, so like everybody, you know, wants it to just be like a straight line, you know, down. But what it actually looks like is a heartbeat. And it goes, you know, and you can, when I'm looking at it, it's like, yeah, I mean, it looks like a heartbeat. It goes up and down and up and down and up and down. And so, you know, and how much does it go up and down? It goes up on average, like for me, and this chart you're looking at is in 2016, when that was the year I lost the bulk of my weight. So you can see it started up about 205, and then by November it was down like at 157 or 158. So but you can see, I mean, there are times where it's, you know, going up and down and up and down, and there overall the trend is positive, meaning it's going down, but in the moment it doesn't feel always like the right things are happening. I ran the numbers, and 40% of the time my weight was higher than it was the day before. So in other words, like even when I was successfully losing weight, because you can see that over time I was losing weight, 40% of the time when I got on the scale, the number was higher than it was the day before. So that can feel very different, you know, when you're actually like getting on the scale and weighing every day, you know, 40 times you feel like you're losing, but over time, that's what's important, that it's trending down. So, so I wanted to put that up there to show you, like, and sometimes the numbers can be higher than that. Like there was one day that that year where the weight went up by 4 pounds overnight, and you know when that happens, it can be really tempting. Like if you have like just a day where it's like, whoa, you know, like I gained 4 pounds. It's really helpful, first of all, to just remember you're chucking that into your average. So then it's like, okay, that's not, you know, that it helps, you know, it's like, okay, because you're going to average that out, and then it's like, okay, it didn't really move my average up too much. It'll probably bump it up a little bit, but it's not so bad. But the thing is, generally speaking, it would be very, very difficult for you to eat so many calories that you would actually have gained a true 4 pounds. Most of the time, it's just water weight. Ramen noodles, man, like ramen noodles will definitely put it on me. Any kind of Chinese food, anything like high salt. Although sugar, like if you eat like a lot of sugary foods one night, it can definitely do that too. So the point is, it really can feel scary, but really it shouldn't be. And if you average your weight and you just really pay attention to how the numbers are doing over time, especially like a 6 week look back. That always helped me, because there were times where I kind of felt like, am I stuck? Am I doing the right things? Do I need to change what I'm doing? Because I'm really it feels like, like I would always think, it feels like I'm not making progress. But if I consistently look back 6 weeks before, now that's very hard, because you have to stick with something for 6 weeks and then start looking back. But I did that, and so I would always just look 6 weeks back. What was the scale at? What was my 7-day average 6 weeks ago? And I would compare that to my current 7-day average. And the current 7-day average was always lower, and so that helped me like mentally to be like, okay, yeah, this is okay. I'm doing the right things. I don't need to change anything, because the thing is with changing stuff, generally speaking, you're going to make it hard on yourself, or at least that's how I am. I'm like, if the thing isn't working, I'm going to just make it hard. And generally speaking, especially years ago, what I would do is like make it way too hard, where I would just like crash and burn. So there you go. Let's see. Jessie L said, what app do you use to track your daily weight? Okay, great question. Sorry, my mouth is dry. So in the beginning, I used the Fitbit app, and I like the Fitbit app because it would do a weekly average. So it wasn't a daily like running 7-day average, but it would, like, every Monday you would see what your weight had averaged out the week before. That was really helpful. But I also used my spreadsheet. So I created, because I love spreadsheets. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to that kind of stuff. But so I created a spreadsheet that would automatically average it, so that I could have like a running one, so that, on those weeks where I felt like, oh, I don't know, like, I didn't want to wait those 3 days to see like how my weight was averaging, because that is how worried I would get about things. I made that spreadsheet so that I could plug in the numbers and just see, like, okay, and it made it easier to compare things, and you can do all sorts of fun things with data. So make charts like I showed you before, and so that was the app I used for a really long time. Then recently, like I would say earlier this year, I finally, when I went to replace my Fitbit, because it had stopped working, I got a new like a tracker. It's called a Zururu, so it's a lot cheaper, and the app was different. And at that point, I was like, I wonder, what kind of other apps there are. Jay, could you hand me my my phone? And so the one I use right now, I think it's just called Weight Tracker. It's on the App Store. Let's see.
Well, the Play Store.
The Play Store. It's just very basic, but I like it, because the thing I like about this one is that it automatically calculates your BMI, which is good. It also shows you, like, if you've got a goal, it'll say like how much you still have left to lose, and how much you've lost. No, none of those are, that one. Yeah, nope, down one. There you go, that one. Yeah, Minster Media Apps makes it. It's free. And one thing I really like about it, it's got the BMI index, and it shows you like where you're at on that. Like, are you in the healthy BMI? And it another cool thing I like about it, it says like healthy weight range reached. Like, so it's easy on the weight loss journey, I think, to kind of get obsessed with the number and to never really be satisfied, always want it to be lower. But this one gives you like not verbal, but like visual confirmation, like you've reached the healthy weight zone. So I like that for that reason. And you can make notes. It's got like, you can just input your weight if you want to, but you can also put in like, I felt like I overate today, and I think that is really helpful too. There's also a thing where it's got little icons you can click on, like factors that might be affecting my weight right now. I had snacks, or I had a meal out, alcohol, stress, what else is on there? Menstrual cycle. You can also put what kind of activity level you had that day. What you can rate it, like, did you have a good day or a bad day? And you can give yourself a thumbs up, thumbs down. I like that stuff. I think it's neat to have that kind of, it's a neat little way to kind of think about your day that you had the day before and the factors that might be affecting it. So, which I think is helpful. Let's see, and I can export that data, which it's a little bit easier to do on that app than it was on Fitbit's app, which I like because I still keep up with my, I still keep up with those numbers in my weight tracking spreadsheet. I don't feel the need to really keep it up as much as I used to. I used to do it like consistently, like, oh, when I was losing weight, I would really sit down with my numbers. A lot of times it was every week. I was sitting down and kind of looking at things. Like I said, I was always looking like 6 weeks back to make sure. Once I got into like a maintenance mode, it was like, as long as I'm in that range, I'm okay. So I didn't, it's more like every month. And now sometimes it's like a few months that I kind of get behind on it. I'm still tracking it, but as far as just doing like sitting down with the numbers and looking back and seeing how everything's tracking, as long as I'm in that zone, I'm good. So, so there you go. So that's what I use. There are other good ones. I've heard a lot of good things about Happy Scale, which I think kind of does like maybe has some sort of predictive element to it, so it can kind of show you, okay, if you keep going on this route, we think you'll probably reach your goal around this point. And I think it does average your weights. There's another one called Libra Scale that I was using for a while just to kind of check it out. I think I stopped using that because it seemed like it wasn't being updated, but there may have been a different reason. I don't use that one anymore, but really it's just whatever works. Even if you just a pen and paper works for you, then do that. And I think there's something to be said for there's a lot of power in writing things down physically and seeing it, in black and white. That can be helpful too. So, all right. Seaworth says, I just got a scale that reads weight, BMI, muscle mass, and water weight. I did a 48-hour fast recently and compared the before and after numbers. I was surprised to see 3 pounds of muscle mass less after 48. I can't intelligently comment on it, but I'm going to comment this. The reason why I've always just stuck with a very simple scale, like my scale is, all it does is shows you the weight. Like it's just, whatever the weight is, like down to like the nearest 1/10 of a pound or something like that. Sorry, yeah, 1/10 of a pound. The reason I picked that, because in the beginning I was looking at scales, I was like, oh, well, like what about like one that has body fat percentage and that kind of thing. And back then, everything I saw said like, it's really not super accurate. So in other words, like the technology's not there. And my understanding is the technology's still just not quite there. Now there are like really expensive things that you can go do at various medical places where they can really, I think, be a lot more accurate. But the last research I did, and it's been a little while. I think it was probably like 6 months or so ago, I think, when the last time I looked at like body fat measurement type things, like how accurate is it? It's just not. So, again, to actually lose 3 pounds of muscle mass, that would, I just, the thing that I was thinking about was, I watched this documentary on fasting, and it was talking about, like, when does your body actually would it start to, eat its muscle? Because that's a concern a lot of people have is, you don't want to get into a fasted state and then like, your body goes for the muscle mass instead of, going for the fat. And the impression I got from that was that it was like, no, it's minimal, even in very extended fasting. Again, not a doctor, but you could check out Volter Longo. I think I always forget his name. And there were a couple. Do you remember the two fasting? It was on Netflix and it was several years ago. But anyway, all right. Well, are we done? I think we've got all the questions answered. So thank you,
Oh, here's
guys.
mine.
Oh, one more
I'll put it
question,
over there
maybe.
for you. Hold on.
Okay. Another question. And if you've got questions, pop them in the chat. And if not, then we'll wrap up after this one. Okay. Okay. Jesse L says, do you have any experience with up days and down days? For example, eat whatever you want one day, and then low calories the next day. I've thought about doing some 500 or 800 calorie down days. Okay, so I've not done this. I think I saw somebody, like it popped up in my feed one day, and they were talking about like that's kind of what they do. They do a down day. Every once in a while, maybe, I don't know. I don't do that. Generally speaking, the reason I don't do it is, for one, I would tend, okay, let me start over. When I don't eat enough, so what I mean by that is like learning how to do OMAD, it's kind of like a thing. You have to learn how to, or for me at least, I had to learn how to eat the right amount. So eat too much and the scale doesn't move down. Eat not enough, and here's what would happen for me. I would feel nauseous. I would feel like I'd have a headache, or maybe just like kind of low energy. It's very different than, which is interesting, I think, it was very different than an extended fast where it's like, you know, like you by day, well, usually I'm pretty miserable on day 2 if I remember correctly, but by day 3 it's like I'm rocking and rolling. But there's something different about just eating like a small amount and then going an extended period of time for me. But because, you know, when I'm not even trying to do that, what I would certainly be eating, oh gosh, I can't imagine, like, because that's basically like a good peanut butter and jelly sandwich for 500 calories. Like that, I would not do that just because I would feel kind of bad. I would rather, if I was going to do that, I would rather just do like a 48-hour fast. But again, it's important to me to just share in the meal. And again, having like a super small amount of food is a different thing for me than like just eating with people.
Plus, you like the simplicity of
Yeah, and I like the simplicity of just, I don't have to think about it. I know, you know, how much to eat, and I know like that if I eat this amount, I'm going to feel good till the next day. And those times where I have, you know, just been like, oh, well, you know, just a little bit less, or like maybe just bad calculation about like, I think I need this much and just don't. Because like beans and rice, I'm still working on that meal. Like it's one of those that I can feel really full at, even or sometimes even like overfull. Like, okay, I think I ate maybe too much. Maybe that was like overeating. And then the next day I'm like, man, I'm really hungry. So apparently the calorie intake, it can be a little bit tricky on that. But Jesse, whatever works for you. I always encourage people to experiment and see, like, well, I mean, because some people apparently really do like that kind of pattern, but I just like to be like, it's easier for me to just do the same thing every day, generally speaking. And like just walking 6 miles a day, like trying to do stuff like, okay, it's Tuesday. Half the time, I don't know what day it is. Like I'm the worst. Like I don't know usually what day it is. I a lot of times forget what season we're in. So I just need it to be like, this is what we're doing. And it's just easier for me that way. Okay, so hopefully that helps. Paul Bain says, thank you for your wisdom. Making the lifestyle your own removes the guilt I get from other channels. Well, thank you. And thank you for buying the audiobook. I shameless plug for the books. I'm the like world's worst marketer, but I do have a couple of books about all this stuff. The Laid Back Guide to Intermittent Fasting, and Overcoming Weight Loss Obstacles, How to Keep Going When Things Get Difficult. So this one is really, you know, I practice intermittent fasting in a laid back way. For me, it's all about doing it how it fits in your own life, not being so worried about all the strict rules and that kind of thing. Just doing it, figuring out what works for you, what can you keep up with for the rest of your life. That's always the question I'm asking myself. Many times when I was losing the weight, I would hear people like, oh, I'm doing, you know, this. A lot of times it was keto. I'm keto now, and you know, and they would talk about really what seemed like spectacular results. But I just kept thinking, you know, like, I wouldn't stick with that because I've done those types of diets before and I don't. So Laid Back Guide. And then this book is more about the hard parts of the weight loss journey, the things that kind of pop up and they're really frustrating. And so I give, you know, personal accounts of like how, like, what was that like and how did I overcome it, so that you, hopefully, you know, if I can share those struggles, if you come across those same things, it'll help you too. So that being said, thank you guys for joining me on this live. It was a lot of fun, and we're going to try to do these on a more consistent basis, I think. We're just still trying to figure out the exact schedule that we'll do. But thank you guys for joining me, and I will see you